I had actually. I thought I'd moved those, but I didn't. So thank you very much, everybody. We're a little over an hour now. We went a little long. I, I, I think that it's important that we have conversations like this about, um, decentralization and our key values. I think it's important that we have them in a critical way, right? Like we did tonight. We both criticize decentralization broadly and our own practice. Yet at the end, for all the reasons in the middle, for the effectiveness of decentralized organizing, for the actual democracy that decentralization provides, not only electorally and politically, but throughout our society in all sectors, and for how decentralized society is. It can be a radical transformation that can get us where we're trying to go. Despite all those flaws and for those reasons, Garrett and I are both pretty strong advocates of decentralization. Right? No system is perfect. We're especially not. No system is perfect when being implemented by humans, especially when those humans are all volunteers, especially when those volunteers wear too many hats, especially when those volunteers volunteer for organizations that doesn't have a whole lot of resources, right?
To kind of swing that a little bit more positive here, one aspect I'll kind of riff on what Chris said earlier about how important it is to think that we're organizing on a continental scale, and it's very big, and we have to kind of allow ourselves the room to understand that it's a very big job, and but we can get there together by building up this continental movement, starting from our local levels and connecting them together through things like the Green Party, and I think the aspect of that also is because we've all grown up under this system of capitalism. We have all lived under capitalism our whole lives. Like, it's not like the U.S. suddenly became capitalist last year or something, right? Like, our whole lives, our parents' lives, our grandparents, whatever, anyone who's been in the U.S., if your family's been in the U.S., you've lived under capitalism. And so that means that we've all grown up in this culture, this attitude, this political atmosphere that has encouraged us to think of democracy as the U.S. representative version, that you have only a very indirect say every 2 to 4 years on maybe sort of influencing a little bit if you're lucky enough to have a primary, which only a handful of districts do every election. And otherwise, you're not really involved. Your representative goes off and makes laws, and maybe you could call them and try to stop really horrible things, but you're generally not really involved. You're not expected to be involved. They think it's weird if you're involved, right? So the point is that we've grown up under this culture where we don't actually understand what democracy is because we don't live it every day. We don't practice it every day. We live under a very undemocratic, very anti-democratic society, despite how much the culture wants to pretend otherwise. So this is a learning process for us. We have to give ourselves the space to understand that we're learning democracy as we go. And that includes building democracy in political parties, in our community, in our workplace, healthcare and food co-ops, like whatever it is you're involved in, you try to practice democracy every day. And the more that we practice it, the more we're going to get better at it. That these complaints and criticisms are not, just to be mean or whatever, right? It's we've tried, and we tried, and here's some things that we've noticed. And if we address those, we'll get better at it. We'll get better at democracy. We'll get better at organizing, and we'll get better at moving toward the movement that we need. That's going to get the systemic change that we need.
And we have to get better, right? Because it's important for people to understand, right? The system that we live in and that we operate in under this authoritarian top-down system is working as designed, right? It was meant to alienate us from our representatives. It was meant to kind of segregate us from power, right? It's working exactly how it's designed, and we need to understand that, because when we're talking, no matter what issue we're talking about, right? When we get to kind of that point where it's like, well, do we want modest reform or do we want to take a new path, right? And when we have that, one of the things we have to, have this conversation about strategically when we're at that kind of fork in the road is, well, does the current path even allow for what we want, right? We can pass ranked choice voting, right? But if you're in a state like Illinois, where to run for Congress in my district as a Republican or Democrat, you have to collect 750 to 800 signatures. But to run as a Green, a Libertarian, or an Independent, you have to collect 16,000 signatures in 90 days from one mostly rural district. Ranked choice voting doesn't matter here because it'll only be the Republicans and the Democrats on the ballot, right? And even if we get on the ballot, it's still for first past the post single member districts where most people, not most, where a large minority is unrepresented, right? And so when we think about these, the idea of forging a new path, right? Doing this really hard thing of, advocating and trying to put into place a transformational system, we have to understand that, the system that we have in place now isn't corrupted. It's acting as designed, right? Our system is not designed in any way to provide, where were they? Sorry. These, right? Our system is not designed to provide direct access and democracy. It's not designed to be participatory. It's not designed to be deliberative at the individual level. It is radical, but it's radical in the worst ways, right? It's radical in that it radically, sequesters power in the hands of the few, right? That's not the kind of radical we're talking about, but capitalism is radical.
Yeah,
for sure. It's extreme.
Neoliberalism is the radical idea that people with money should make all the decisions in all aspects of life.
Yeah. So we need to make sure we're remembering, right, that we're not just advocating for something new because we're curmudgeons, right? Or we're advocating for something new because what we have cannot allow for what we want. It cannot allow for what we're fighting for, and we can't keep. We frankly don't have the time to keep putting our energies into, outlets that don't actually end where we need them to end. In my time working as a community organizer, one thing I can tell you is people are ready for a new path. They're not really interested in someone trying to game the path better. They're not trying to get a slightly larger piece of the pie. They want to throw the pie out. This is why the largest voting bloc most elections is non-voters, right? They're not apathetic like people would like to paint them. They're alienated. They're alienated from power. They're alienated from being able to participate and being able to have a voice. And what they are ready for is something new. So it's up to us to build it. By doing it in a decentralized way, we buffer against a lot of the problems that are built in and by design in our authoritative system we have now.